It's music theory. Online, let's learn some theory. Online, by watching modules. Online, with music theory. Online.
Hi everybody. Today is Module 16. We've been covering intervals, and you can now write and identify major intervals, minor intervals, and perfect intervals. We're going to move today to triads. A chord is simply 3 or more notes that are sounded together. Chords are always a third apart, and a triad is simply a chord that's made up of 3 notes. We have a bottom note, a middle note, and a top note. Is a triad. Don't you want to hear that? Today we're going to look at major triads. The way a triad is formed is that we have a root. The root is the bottom note of your triad. If it's a C major triad, the root is C. Then we have an interval of a major third above it, so that would be E. And then we have a perfect fifth from the root to the top, which would be G. So we have a major third and then a perfect fifth that make a major triad. Now, a major triad can be built on any note, but right now what we're going to be looking at is building triads on the first, the fifth, and the fourth degree of the scale. In order for a major triad to be a major triad, it must have that interval of a major third from the root to the third, and it must have a perfect fifth from the root to the fifth. When you're identifying a triad on the tonic, or a triad that's built on the first degree of the scale, we would use the Roman numeral 1. When we're talking about scale degrees, like the first note of the scale or the third note of the scale, we use Arabic numbers. When we're talking about chords, we use Roman numerals. When you build a major triad on the first degree of the scale, in this case C major, the notes of the triad would be C, E, and G, the root, the third, and the fifth. Now we're going to talk a little bit about terminology so you don't get totally confused. When we were talking about scales, we talked about the tonic. The tonic of a scale is the first note of the scale. When we're talking about triads, we talk about the root of the triad. The root of the triad is the first note, or the bottom note of the triad. Scales use Arabic numbers. Triads use Roman numerals. And all the triads are always named for the root. We have different triads here. They're all major triads because they have the root and then a major third, D to F sharp, and then a fifth. So that's a D major triad. It's called a D major triad because D is the root, and we always name triads by the root. The next triad is E flat, G, B flat. So E flat to G is a major third, and E flat to B flat is a perfect fifth. That's an E flat major triad. It's called E flat major because it's named after the root, which is E flat. The next one, we have E, then G sharp, which is a major third, and then a perfect fifth, E to B. And that's the sound. That's an E major triad because E is the root of that triad. And when you're writing the major triad on the tonic, the first thing to do is write the first 5 notes of the scale. In the first example, it's G major scale. So here we have the first 5 notes of G major scale. G, A, B, C, D. the triad that's on first degree of the scale, or the triad on the tonic, is GBD. The next example is A flat major. A flat, B flat, C, D flat, and E flat. So the notes you need are A flat, the root, the third note of the scale, and then the fifth note of the scale. A flat, C, and E flat. Here we have A major, the first 5 notes of A major scale, and then the first note of the scale, the third note of the scale, and the fifth note of the scale, which makes the A major triad. The next scale is B flat major, the first 5 notes, and then the root, the third, and the fifth. And then the last one is D major. Then the root, the third, and the fifth. And then all together. Here's some triads with key signatures. We have A major triad. The next one is F major triad. The next one is G major triad with no key signature. And the next one is B flat major triad with no key signature. To sum up what we've been talking about, scales have tonics, triads have roots. Scales have Arabic numbers, triads have Roman numerals. The triad is always named by the root of the chord. A major triad must have a major third and a perfect fifth above the root. Always remember what key you're in and read the instructions carefully. Sometimes the instructions will ask you to write the key signature. Sometimes it will say to add accidentals as necessary. So read your instructions very carefully when you're doing the assignments. So this week, your assignments are to write major triads in major keys. Have a super duper week. Bye-bye.
It's music theory. Online, let's learn some theory. Online, by watching modules. Online, with music theory. Online.